Tinwell is a quiet village. The sort of place where history sits quietly in the background, woven into old stone walls and houses that have stood for centuries. One of those houses is the Limes, standing on Main Street. It is a large 18th century home, the kind of place that has seen generations come and go. Families have lived there, children have grown up there, and like many old houses, it has gathered its share of stories over the years. But one story in particular has followed the Limes for decades. It begins with a nurse. Long ago, the house was said to be home to an elderly woman who worked as a nanny and nurse. In those days, it was common for larger houses to employ someone to care for children and tend to the sick. She was known as a quiet, dedicated woman who spent much of her life looking after others. Then one day, tragedy struck. According to the story passed down through the village, the nurse fell down the staircase inside the house. The fall broke her neck and she died instantly. Over time, the event faded into memory, as these things often do. Families moved in and out of the house. Years passed. Life in Tinwell continued. But the story was not finished. Many years later, a family living in the Limes had a young son who became ill. One night, the boy woke up in the darkness of his bedroom. The room was quiet. The house was still. As he looked towards the end of the bed, he saw someone standing there. In the dim light, he thought it was his mother. The figure stood quietly, dressed in white, watching him. The boy called out to her, but she didn't answer. The figure simply remained there for a moment, silent and still. Eventually, the boy drifted back to sleep. The next morning, he asked his mother why she had come into his room during the night, but had not spoken to him. His mother looked puzzled. She told him she had never been in his room at all. It was only later that people began to remember the story of the nurse who had died in the house. From that point on, the story took on a life of its own. The belief grew that when a child living in the Limes became ill, the figure of the old nurse sometimes appeared quietly at the end of the bed, watching over them. Not frightening, not threatening, just watching. Almost as if she was still doing the job she had done in life. Some people described seeing a woman in a long white uniform moving quietly upstairs. Others said they had simply felt that someone was there. A presence in the room, a sense of being watched, but not in a threatening way. And strangely, the stories always seemed to involve children who were unwell. Over time, the tale became one of Tinwell's most curious local legends. It was told quietly between neighbours, mentioned in passing conversations, and occasionally shared with newcomers to the village. But the story took an unexpected turn in more recent years. At one point, the house was lived in by doctors, and there were children living there as well. Yet none of those children ever reported seeing the mysterious figure, which led to a rather comforting theory among locals. Perhaps the old nurse simply realized that she wasn't needed anymore. If there was already a doctor in the house, maybe she felt her watch was no longer required. Or perhaps the nurse still walks the house quietly at night, unseen by those who sleep there now. Because old stories have a habit of lingering in places like Tinwell. And if you ever pass the Limes on Main Street, it looks perfectly ordinary. Just another historic village house standing quietly in the village. But according to the old story, when a child in that house becomes ill, someone may still appear silently at the end of the bed, a nurse, still keeping watch, long after her own life ended.